Monster. Yes, not that monster. This monster. Although, I will say, this is a monster both in that it is the anime monster, and secondly, it is a monstrous piece of fanfiction that I don't want to see ever again outside of this video. But, in any case, monster, you know, I'm willing to say, because
You see, I'm not a gambling man, so I'm not gonna say, you know, I'm willing to gamble, I'm willing to wager.
But if I had to say anything, 50%, maybe 40% of you, that's not a lot, 57% of you have not seen the Monster anime. In which case, that is to your detriment. And, you gotta watch it, man. What is essentially a slideshow of psychological illnesses. Monster is this psychological thriller that manages to captivate and encapsulate the soul. Monster provides this constant feeling that is neither anxiety or fear, but something that is in between, something that teeters on the edge of both, and it never goes away. As soon as you start watching the anime from the get-go in episode 1, there's only one season, you start to feel a little bit off. Whether it's, you know, the colors, the art style, or maybe perhaps it's the way the characters talk, right? There's something about it, you're like, I don't know about this, dude. It feels a little bit weird to watch. Not gonna lie. You watch it anyway because you're intrigued all of a sudden. You're like, wow, dude, can't believe it. I feel intrigued, I feel interested. There's something about this anime that looks so interesting, that feels very interesting, and I wonder what that could be. First and foremost, Monster is a psychological thriller. It belongs to that genre. Secondly, it is reminiscent of shows like House, even though that might not be a psychological thriller. Sometimes it can be, but in any case, House, mainly because of the fact that well, the protagonist is a doctor, and the doctor spends his time saving a bunch of lives, so in that case, it's like House, but outside of that, maybe not really, so yeah, okay. It's more similar to Taken, right? Or maybe even Mindhunter on Netflix if you haven't watched that one. That's a pretty good show as well. I would highly recommend go watch it. Monster is reminiscent to those types of shows, and like I said earlier, you know, as soon as you start watching from the first episode, you're on the edge. You're edging. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, whoa, dude, oh, this is crazy, man. And you're like, wow, this is like, what's going on here? And it just grabs you. You know, it takes you by the throat, and it strangles you in a way that just can't be described. You gotta watch it, seriously. But without further ado, I want to get right into some of the characters here, in particular, the protagonist and, of course, the antagonist. The protagonist being, first and foremost, Dr. Tenma. Tenma balls. It's not even a good D's Nuts joke. I thought about it. If the word that I'm about to say, or name, has ma at the end of it, I will say either balls, penis, nuts, or in any case, Dr. Tenma is a doctor. Obviously. No shit, dude. He is your classic anime protagonist, and they show him in elegant fashion in the sense that Dr. Tenma manages to make friends with a lot of the people that he meets, a lot of the townsfolk that he comes across, and I don't know, I just find it funny because it's like, that's a classic anime trope, especially when you watch shonen anime like Naruto or fucking Black Clover. That one sucks, by the way. Well, the anime is a little bit mid. There are good episodes, but mid overall. Dr. Tenma, protagonist, classic anime flair. He manages to make friends with everybody he sees. He has strong ideals, right? He's a doctor, and his ideal vision of what a doctor is and what a doctor should be is that a doctor is someone who saves lives. Period. That's it. For him, that's what a doctor is. It's set in stone. Moses wrote it on a stone tablet, and he's like,
Dr. Tenma, listen to me, man. You have to save lives, period. And that's it.
What I love about this is that in the show, in Monster, in the anime, in the anime, you see Dr. Tenma rarely straying away from what his ideal vision is of a doctor, even though there are moments when, as a human being, you might be more inclined to, you know, take a life. If that's something that you do as a human being. I don't, personally, but, that kind of consistency is very much appreciated in the anime, as well as just in the way of giving Dr. Tenma something to cling on to as he goes through many different trials and tribulations throughout the show. It's fantastic. I absolutely love it. The biggest example of Dr. Tenma straying, not straying far from his idea of being a doctor, or his ideals of being a doctor, is that he ends up saving a child who, becomes the titular monster. So there is that. As Dr. Tenma realizes this, he begins to regret the fact that he saved this life, even though his ideals would have it otherwise, and that he should be grateful he saved a life, right? Because that's his job as a doctor. But that's where the anime kind of really pulls through in that sense, in that the tug and pull between Dr. Tenma's ideals and his issues that have arisen because he saved a life. I love it. The conflict of interest, fantastic. Oh, it's very good, and I like it a lot. Another thing that I do appreciate is that Dr. Tenma isn't necessarily the complete antithesis of Johan, who is the child that Dr. Tenma saves. Johan is the antagonist, but as you watch the anime, you realize Dr. Tenma is not just the complete opposite of what Johan is, nor is Johan the complete opposite of what Dr. Tenma is either. They both have their own goals, and they're both driven by completely different things, even though those things might be in completely opposite directions. They're not the complete, Johan and Dr. Tenma are not the complete opposite of one another, and that's one thing that I love, because that just introduces more individuality to both Johan and Dr. Tenma as characters. And while they are consistent in terms of how their characters progress throughout the story, there is still this level of nuance that is completely appreciated when it comes to how these characters operate, how these characters behave when given different situations, how these characters behave just in general. And I love it. As I've explained, Dr. Tenma is a doctor. Johan is essentially Hitler the sequel. I know that might not be well tolerated on the YouTube algorithm, but whatever, it's kind of just how it is. And it's for a few reasons. One, he is quite devious with his plans. He's a bit of a menace. Well, a bit of a menace is an understatement. He is a huge menace to society and the people around him. But that's not just because he's meant to be. He's not just a menace because, I'm here to destroy and I'm evil. I am the incarnation of pure evil and I'm here to destroy everything. That's not him. He's Hitler the sequel because of traumatic childhood events. There is an aspect that is completely real about Johan, in that the way he is and why he does certain things is because he suffers from psychological disorders and illnesses that people don't want, to say the least. No one wants psychological orders or nobody wants psychological disorders or illnesses, obviously, whether it's a relatively benign disorder or maybe something a little bit worse. Nobody wants one, but I'm just saying, what Johan suffers from is bad, and it draws a hazy line between kind of two personalities that he has. One of those personalities, of course, being Hitler the sequel, and the other personality being this individual who's lost hope, who's just lost in general as a person, and who doesn't know who they are. And that is due to a whole host of reasons. One chief reason being that Johan suffered a lot in his childhood, during his childhood, and so did his sister, but I won't be diving too much into that because that's really juicy. That's a really juicy part of the story, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, even though I am kind of providing a majority of the spoilers, so whatever. I don't care. It's a lie I do. In any case, one thing about Johan that I kind of like, but also not really, is that there is a lack of his presence throughout the anime. The anime kind of paints Johan as this puppet master who's never really seen, but his presence is most definitely felt. You can feel him pulling strings, you can feel him working behind the scenes. He's always 2 steps ahead of Dr. Tenma in whatever Dr. Tenma's trying to accomplish, and It's always a surprise for the most part, even though it's kind of implied that, oh yeah, Johan's definitely behind this. It's a nice and pleasant, well, I say pleasant, pleasant in the sense that it's good, it's a good show. Not pleasant in the sense that what he does is like, oh yeah, I'm charitable, I'm giving money to charity. No. In fact, what he does is that he kills kids. Because he's trying to make more of himself or something. It's weird, but it's also really good. It's weird, it's weirdly good. Okay? It's disturbing, but it's realistic. And that's what makes this anime to English. And that is what makes this anime like really good, is that it's off-putting and disturbing because of how real it is. Like, you can imagine this happening. Probably, you know? Maybe not to the fullest extent, but somewhat. But okay, Johan and Dr. Tenma aside, there are a ton of other characters for the viewer to see and experience as they watch the anime, and just to kind of save on time, as well as the fact that I'm lazy, I first would like to say that every character is relatively crafted well. Incredibly crafted characters. They all add to the already three-dimensional depth that the main duo have, Dr. Tenma and Johan. These guys right here. These photos are horrific, by the way. They're there. I just think they're funny, but like, god damn, these fanfictions are nuts. In any case, not that I've been looking at them at all. Every other character, you know, that is introduced in the show, they're all incredibly well crafted. There are lots to love about each of the characters. There are many things to hate as well about each of the characters. You have characters like Wolfgang Grimmer. Shout out my boy, rest in peace. I'm gonna miss you forever. My favorite character, probably outside of Dr. Tenma. Johan's twin sister, Nina. Inspector Lunge, who's a bit of a cock, not gonna lie. A bit of an ingrown cock hair. Eva Heinemann, bitch. Roberto, jacked ingrown cock hair, and of course the baby, which was a surprise to me when I heard his name. I was like, damn, they really put him in here. Not a single character is wasted in terms of development, in terms of story progression, and things of that nature, and I love it. I love every bit of the character development in Monster. In terms of art direction and the environments that are portrayed and shown in the anime, all of them are fantastic. They're all based off of real places in the world. Germany, namely Czechoslovakia, of course, the two places that this anime takes place in. And it's all well crafted. You can see the Gothic architecture, and it's well done. It's well made. It's well realized. And the art style in the environment translates, weirdly enough, to the characters as well, in the sense that the characters in Monster, they don't normally look like what you would expect from anime characters. They don't have like the fucking huge, bulbous popping eyes that some anime characters normally would have, that, you know, give anime its anime look. And you know what? It helps. It really helps sell the mood and the way the anime is portrayed and how I felt as a viewer, which... As a viewer, I felt disturbed, to say the least. Yeah, the art style and the environments, all fantastic. They all help translate this idea that the world that Monster takes place in is bleak, it is dull, it is relatively colorless. All of the colors that appear in the show are very dull. Although, yes, they can be quite bright in the sense that, oh yes, blue sky, that should be bright, ideally. But in the anime, it's pretty fucking dull, and it conveys this whole mood of like, yeah, everything here, shitty. I don't want to live here at all. 0% chance I'm living here. I think it helps solidify what the manga was going for, and perhaps the anime as well, for that matter, was going for. It helps solidify all of those feelings and really helps convey just that shitty atmosphere, which is also quite lovely in the sense that it's good storytelling. Moving on from the environments and the art direction, I'll go over the story. Again, a little bit lazy here. I also don't want to go into too much detail in regards to the story. I went into enough detail about the characters as it is, and I think that gives way to a good number of the spoilers, but in any case, in the way of the story, all I will say here and that I will cover, it'll be all relatively shallow, especially in comparison to kind of how I dive into Johan and Dr. Tenma and a little bit of the other characters. And just so that I can save on time, I'm going to say what I've written off of my phone here. Monster's story is, in my eyes, one of the best that anime and TV shows in general have to offer. It's an undulating tale of life and death, love and hatred, nostalgia and regret, sacrifices, misery, and moral ambiguity. And while the show mostly adheres to the aforementioned adjectives and verbs, Monster impresses further by displaying nuance that ebbs and flows from episode to episode. It's in this nuance and the pillars that uphold the plot of Monster that make the story come to life as if the show itself were a real-world event. However, Monster's real-world groundedness isn't what makes the show a masterpiece. While it most certainly helps, and can definitely be a pillar in that regard, it's the show's display of the human condition that really sells me. The human condition isn't set in stone, nor is it complete, utter chaos when personalities shift and humans change. The human condition isn't pure beauty or unadulterated ugliness. The human condition is this ever-changing, almost water-like substance whose form is adherent to a set of parameters. But these parameters also change as humans experience different things and meet others. It's in this that Monster excels, and thus provides an incredibly well-crafted piece of media. I wrote that. I thought I wrote it pretty well. It obviously is a little bit different than how I've been talking throughout the entire video, but it is what it is. I think it wraps up and concludes what I want to say about Monster. It's a fantastic anime. It's a show that, weirdly enough, hasn't garnered the same amount of attention as I thought it would have. It's a great show. Not just anime. I feel like even though we've gone past that whole weeaboo phase of anime, it's still there kind of, but whatever, you know what I mean? Just in general, Monster is a great show. You should definitely go watch it if you haven't already. There is a lot to like and a lot to discover. Yes, I divulged a little bit too much maybe about the characters, in particular Johan and Dr. Tenma, but there's way more to the anime if you go watch it now. I did spoil, but I didn't spoil a whole lot. Maybe I did. In any case, fantastic show. The ending is a little bit cryptic, I will say that much. Of course, there are a few things to not like about the anime. In my opinion, the music gets a little bit stale. They reuse the same track over and over again when it comes to kind of the psychological thriller parts of the show, but that's fine. And maybe there's a little bit, like, there's not enough of Johan. I'll be honest. There's not enough of Johan in the anime. I wish there was more. Whatever. I think those items pale in comparison to what the show accomplishes and what each episode brings to the table. I think it's a fantastic piece of media. Which brings me to my last point. Watch the anime.